I'm not very good at math. It's not my favorite subject. It will never be my favorite subject. I have set my heart into that math will never be my favorite subject. I remember going and looking and taking my first course in algebra. And I am looking at that and I'm thinking, I don't have any idea what's being taught. Now, geometry I did fairly well in, but algebra 1 and 2, I struggled with it and I struggled with it. And you know what? Many times when people look at the book of First Peter, they struggle with it. And it's a hard book to understand. It's not a book that you can just read through it and understand what's being said. You have to apply yourself to it. And that's what we've been doing here. Now, we could go into even greater application, but we don't want to take a whole lot of time. But please understand that even though First Peter is a hard book to understand, you can understand it. Not only can you understand it, but it will bless you. It will help you to stand. Now, the purpose of First Peter is to equip believers to stand during hard times, especially during times of persecution. Now, we here in the United States, we are beginning to see tremendous resistance against our faith. All around the world, the faith of believers is being resisted. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why the Lord led us to this study of First Peter. We need to prepare ourselves to stand. How many of you know the best part or best time to prepare yourself is before the conflict? Well, brothers and sisters, I don't mean to be a prophet of doom. I am not a prophet. I'm a Bible teacher. But we are heading for bad times. We are heading for difficult times of persecution. And that's why we need to study First Peter. And that's why we need to get this into our hearts and into our minds. Now, we're today at First Peter, the 4th chapter, verse number 6. Now, verse number 6 is a challenging verse. And this is what it says. For the gospel has for this purpose been preached even to those who are dead, that though they were judged in the flesh as men, they may live in the Spirit according to the will of God. What in the world is Peter talking about? Now, some people think that Peter here is saying that people who have died, that they can receive the preaching of the gospel. You know what? When you die, you're finished. You're either going to heaven or you're going to hell. It's too late. What Peter is talking about, and he's making reference here to chapter 3, verse 9, where Jesus went into prison and he preached to the people that were pre-flood. In other words, that they were people that were before Noah's day. And he went there and he preached the gospel. And how many of you know that they were sentenced in their bodies? They died physically. But Jesus went there and he proclaimed the gospel to them so that they could be saved. Now, I don't know for sure if all of them were saved or not. I hope they all were. I would love to run into some guy that was a second cousin of Adam or something like that, you know. But I don't know if they were all saved. But I do know this: Jesus had to go and preach the gospel to all mankind, and that included the people before the flood. So here in verse number 6, it's telling us that Jesus even went and he preached this wonderful gospel to these people. And these people who were dead, who had been sentenced to death in their physical bodies, would be able to be saved by the Spirit of God. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about people who, after they're dead, they're going to get a second chance. That they're going to go to a holding place and somebody's going to come down and they're going to bring them the gospel, and then they're going to get another chance to accept Jesus. That is not what Peter is talking about. Peter is talking about, and he's making reference to the 3rd chapter, verse number 19. And he's talking about the people who lived before Noah. Now, let's go on into verse number 7. But the end of all things is near. Now, Peter was not talking prophetically. He was talking in reality. And he says the end of all things is near. You see, Peter wrote this not too many years before he would go and give his life as a sacrifice in the city of Rome, where he would die for the faith. And so Peter is realizing that the end is near. How many of you know that every one of us can say those words? Now, I'm not expecting to die in the next 24 hours, but you know what? I know the end's coming. I know it's near. Now, I'm not talking about the return of Jesus. I believe Jesus could return at any time. Peter's not talking about the second coming of Christ. He's talking about our time here on earth. Our end is near. Now, this is what he says. He says, the end of all things is near. Therefore, be of sound judgment. In other words, judge things and evaluate things with soundness of mind. Look at things in reality. Look at the temptations that you're giving, and look at them in reality. They are there not to help you. They are there to destroy you. They are there to take you off the road of the will of God, which we've talked about before. These lusts of the flesh, they are not there for pleasure. Or we'll say this, they might be there for pleasure, but it's not going to be eternal pleasure. And so he says, be of sound judgment, be sober in spirit for the purpose of prayer. Now here, when he says be sober, he's not talking about not being drunk. But basically, he's saying be alert, be ready. How many of you know that when a soldier stands guard, that one of the things that soldier needs to be is he needs to be alert. He needs to be sober. Now here Peter says, be sober for the purpose of prayer. And he says, we need to constantly be looking for a place to stand in prayer, to resist in prayer, constantly aware of what's going on around us so that we can resist in prayer. Now, my time is up for today. I hope that you've enjoyed this. Our prayer is that you will be blessed until we speak to you again.